Welcome back to my channel, to my introductory video on the new Leica SL3-S. And of course, it was to be expected that sometime after the Leica SL3 has been introduced, there will be an S version of this camera, which will be significantly more affordable, has lower resolution and is drilled for absolutely top video capabilities. That's the way it was before with the Leica SL2-S. Sometime after the introduction of the SL2, the SL2-S hit the market, and the one I have here in front of me on my table is the Leica SL2-S Reporter in that dark green finish. In this video, I will provide all essential information you need to know about this newest member of the Leica SL family and what you can do with it. Of course, I've taken this camera out in the field to the beautiful city of Lucerne in Switzerland, getting my first impressions on image quality. I will show these images, will comment on them. We'll also have a detailed look into the camera. We'll have a short session about specifications. Quote unquote short is important here. And of course, I also invite you to drop me a comment what you think about this newest Leica SL camera here, and how you like what Leica provided in terms of upgraded and improved specifications. Let's kick this off. First of all, I want to thank my friends from Leica Switzerland and Leica Zurich for giving this camera to me already a couple of months before the announcement in the market, and in this way allowing me to get my first impressions on that camera. I will also purchase that camera for myself and pay for it, of course, because I think this is a really good supplement to my Leica SL3 based on what I'm going to say in this video. And the last point I want to quickly make: if you're not a subscriber yet and you want to support my channel, please subscribe and in this way help increasing the reach of my content, which I post regularly on my channel. And now let's go right into the topic. From time to time I will take my SL2-S Reporter into my hands and will show you something, but for the time being let's quickly look at the Leica SL3 and the Leica SL3-S. And you see, in terms of design, this is absolutely the same with one exception, namely the Leica engraving here is in black. And here it is in white. So you might be tempted to argue that the new SL3-S is a little less catching attention than the SL3, because Leica is only recognizable if you play a little bit with the angle of the camera and the light. It's not a white engraving here. But of course the Leica logo is sitting in the same way, in the same position on both camera bodies. So whoever is a little bit familiar with photography will recognize this is an expensive Leica camera. If we look at the two cameras from the back, is kind of the same. We have here the buttons, we have here the buttons. We have now on the SL3-S a tiltable LCD screen in the same way as we have it on the Leica SL3. That used not to be the case on the Leica SL2. If you look here, this screen here is fixed mounted, and also the buttons are still on the left hand side, which is the older design of the SL lineup, whereas here it's sitting on the right hand side. But if we compare the SL3 and the SL3-S, design is exactly the same. Buttons, joystick, control wheels, even from the top, if you look, the top display, everything is exactly the same. In terms of ports, you also have kind of the same situation. Let me show this to you here quickly on the SL3. You have a full-size HDMI port, you have ports for audio recording, and for a headphone, you have here exactly the same if we look into that. And it also used to be the same on the SL2-S. So there have been minor upgrades, which I'm going to show quickly in a short session on specifications, but there's not a lot going on. What is remarkable now on the Leica SL3, of course, you know from the various videos I have on my channel, we actually have a compact flash express type B card slot and an SD card slot. This one here, compact flash express type B, is lightning fast and helps you to process the huge amount of data which is flowing through the camera if you go for full resolution or for 8K video. And that's the same now here on the SL3-S. We have a compact flash express type B card and we have an SD card slot, and that used not to be the case on the Leica SL2-S, because here we had two SD card slots and the speed was not as remarkable as we'll find it on this new SL3-S. In the early marketing material from Leica on the new SL3-S, when I received the pre-production sample to try it out, I didn't find any data points on the camera body dimensions, but it looks to me like they are exactly the same. So let's try this out a little bit. Let's see here. I think if I look at that, That looks like a perfect match if we put them side by side here. That also looks to me like exactly matching on the electronic viewfinder side, exactly matching. Here on this side, exactly matching. So I would safely claim that the dimensions of the camera body of the SL3S and the SL3 are exactly the same, which would make perfectly sense to me in the way Leica is driving forward their design agenda. In terms of menu system and graphical user interface, the new SL3S has now the same Leica UX design as the Leica SL3. Whereas in the newest firmware on the SL2S, we still have the former design. And if I go here into the menu, for instance, and do the same here and do it here, you see the differences. The design has completely changed. I can scroll a little bit forward here. So you see this. Let me go here. Let me go here. And you see here we have this new UX graphical design which Leica developed with the introduction of the SL3, which now found its way into the SL3S, but is not there for the SL2S. And there will also highly likely not be any firmware upgrade turning this graphical user interface into the same as what you see on the SL3S and the SL3. What I also like, and people can guess so if they follow me on my channel and my videos on the Leica SL3, I like a lot this new button design here with the LED ring around it and the immediate standby mode and then waking the camera up from standby, which you have now also on the SL3S in the same way as you have it on the SL3. Whereas on the SL2S you have the classical on-off switch in the way you have it on these earlier cameras. The way I introduced the new camera to the audience on my channel in the past was very often turning the discussion into a few minutes of a battle on specifications. That's not what I want to do in this video. I really want to show you later on sample images and sharing with you my experience how it was shooting that new Leica SL3S and what I think in terms of first impressions about image quality. But I have collected, of course, for the sake of completeness for you in 2 tables all the specifications you need to know, which then constitute the differences between the SL3, the SL2S and the SL3S. And if you're interested in reading them in detail and taking your time for it, then please pause the video for a moment, take a screenshot and go through these specifications by yourself whenever the time is right. And I want to only provide a few comments now on this table and the next table in order to give you a flavor what Leica has improved from the SL2S to the new SL3S. So let's get started. First of all, Leica says there is a newly developed backside illuminated CMOS sensor in the SL3S with 24 megapixel in the same way as what the resolution was and is on the SL2S, but with a double ISO range going up to 200,000 ISO compared to 100,000 ISO for the SL2S and the SL3. We have in-body image stabilization on all 3 cameras, and the gain in terms of performance of f-stops you get is about the same. But we have a significant upgrade in the processing speed in the camera because the Leica SL3S has now in the same way as the Leica SL3 a Maestro 4 processor compared to a Maestro 3 sitting in the SL2S. We have upgrades in terms of storage, so we have now Compact Flash Express Type B plus SD card slots in the SL3S. We have upgrades on HDMI and USB ports. We have double the buffer when we go for continuous burst rate shooting, and that's remarkable. The SL3S is claimed to go up to 30 frames per second with full autofocus support in a continuous way. That means the focus is updating, and whenever your subject is moving, you will still get a sharp image. And that's really a big upgrade. By specifications only, it's the first Leica camera which you can really call a sports and action camera. We have the same autofocus system now as what we have on the Leica SL3 based on hybrid autofocus, so face detection, contrast detection, object detection. Of course, we have person, animal, face, eye detection, and we have an insanely high number of 779 autofocus points sitting in the Leica SL3S, which should really improve autofocus performance a lot when we compare it with the SL2S. And then my true highlight of that new camera is this is the first Leica camera and one of the very few cameras in the world who have a multi-shot mode, so for higher pixel resolution, where you can actually get the shooting done handheld. You don't have the camera to sit on a tripod in order to go for multi-shot mode, and that is a big upgrade. Now on the SL3, for the time being, we don't have multi-shot at all. I still think that it will come at a certain point in time, and there will be a firmware upgrade where we get it. But on the SL2S we had it up to 96 megapixel, and on the SL3S we can now go for handheld multi-shot with 48 megapixel or 96 megapixel, and I'm going to illustrate this in a moment quickly here in the studio. What's also remarkable is from the Content Authenticity Initiative, content credentials which we have in the Leica M11P did not make it due to timing reasons into the Leica SL3, but it is here now in the Leica SL3-S. So for professional photographers, this is a very unique feature which can help you to protect your content and your rights on your image. On the next table, I want to quickly talk about the LCD screen, because that one is tiltable now on the SL3S in the same way as we have it on the SL3, whereas on the SL2S it's a fixed LCD screen. Resolution I don't have to talk about. Video capabilities have been massively upgraded on the Leica SL3S. You can go up to 6K and you have open gate recording, and I'm going to show quickly a picture in a moment what that means. Basically it represents a full sensor capture. We have a significantly increased Wi-Fi speed if you transfer images to the Leica Photos app, and that is something we already saw with the introduction of the Leica SL3. So it takes you, based on the smaller file size for a DNG file on the SL3S, only about 1 second to transfer one image to the Leica Photos app. And for this you need it on the Leica SL2S 10 seconds. So now I think you really have a smooth workflow to remotely shoot your camera with the Leica Photos app, and the speed is massively improved to what we had before. We have upgrades in the connectivity, we have an upgrade in terms of a timecode interface which was not there on the Leica SL2S, and we have the new Leica UX design in the graphical user interface with these icons, which people call sometimes the Leicons, which gives kind of a nicer representation of what's going on in the menu and in the different entries in your menu system. And then last but not least, what I wanted to quickly show is what means open gate recording. So this is a slide from Leica, and open gate recording enables basically using the entire sensor area rather than going for the typical 16:9 aspect ratio. That means you really exploit the maximum resolution the sensor is capable of providing. You have reframing flexibility. You can play better with different aspect ratios in your video recording. You have, of course, the option in Premiere Pro later, if you work on your video and you post-process it, to crop in and create certain effects which can or maybe will be creative. And I think that is something which we've seen on other cameras, but is here on a Leica camera for the very first time. And that already concludes my comments on specifications and differences of the three cameras. I want to now spend a moment with the camera playing with it, and then I want to go into sample images. I want to illustrate now a couple of points I made in my brief walk through the specifications, so you get a better feeling of what this is all about. And let's start with the multi-shot mode. So here's the Leica SL2-S reporter, and I can go here into drive mode, and then at the very end somewhere we have multi-shot. And see, the tiniest little shake and vibration leads to that error message. I can keep my hands as steady and calm as ever I want. It will say vibration detected. Please use a stable base for multi-shot. So on the SL2S, you really needed to have, and also on the SL2 by the way, you needed to have the camera resting on a tripod without any shakes and vibrations in order to use the multi-shot mode. That is no longer necessary on the Leica SL3-S. So here on the SL3-S, multi-shot is also sitting under drive mode. Let's go into the menu and let's go here to the very right hand side. It's sitting in the same position when you swipe as it was sitting on the SL2S. And let me show you how this is shooting in handheld. And you see, first of all, there is no error message any longer. There's also a menu here where I can customize this under drive mode. Let's go into that. And you see below the multi-shot entry, we find settings. And in settings, I can switch between handheld and tripod. Under tripod, and can also activate a motion artifacts correction, which is very useful if you have moving subjects in the scene. You have different file formats here, so you can go to DNG, DNG and LJPEG, DNG and MJPEG, LJPEG with 96 megapixel, MJPEG with 48.1 megapixel, and so on and so on. Let's go for DNG here for a moment. And then, of course, that's the big advantage on the Leica multi-shot setup. The image is processed in camera. No need to import, for instance, 16 frames or more or less into a separate software like you do on Fuji, Sony and other camera brands, and then processing it in that separate software. It's all happening inside the camera body. And that is super nice and super convenient. I'll show you in a second how this works. You also have a self timer, which is meaningful, of course, in particular when you're here on the tripod setting under mode. And let's go for a handheld multi-shot here in file format DNG, and you see how this works. So first of all, I focus, halfway pressing the shutter button, then I push it down, and then the process will start. Have a look. You get a multi-shot icon or symbol here. You see no error messages. I have not the most steady and calm hands in the world, but it works, and I will show you later in the sample images how this looks like and what boost in resolution you get. And now it's creating the multi-shot image, and then it will be there immediately in the photo roll. And here it is. I can now zoom in here, and you see I can crop in much deeper than I would be able on a 24 megapixel image. So this works very, very nice. It's, by the way, also super sharp if you look into that. Very nice and very well done, Leica. I think this is a great solution and a huge upgrade that you can go for multi-shot, handheld, and don't have to place the camera on a tripod. The next point I want to make here is on burst rate. Let's go again into the SL2-S and let's go here into drive mode. By the way, we are still in multi-shot mode here. Let's change that now. Let's go here into drive mode and let's see what we can do in terms of burst mode here. So here we have continuous 25 frames per second, but no autofocus. Autofocus we get only up to 5 frames per second. And let's have a look how this looks like. This is the speed you get, right? Let's have a look into the Leica SL3. That's the next one we take here. Let's go into that. No memory card inserted, I know, because I used it in my new SL3-S. Let's go away from that. Let's open this up here. And let's go here in the menu under drive mode. Let's go from manual here in aperture priority, first of all. Then let's go into autofocus continuous. Let's go into drive mode. And then we get here the different burst rates. And you see it always indicates on the very right hand side here, as long you have autofocus available. And then here, if I switch to 6 frames per second, the autofocus is no longer there. And this then sounds like this. Forget that I don't have a memory card. These memory cards are in the SL3-S at this point in time. So you get an impression how this looks like on the Leica SL3. And now let's see how this works in the Leica SL3-S. So let's go here first of all into drive mode, and I have continuous autofocus already activated. And for instance, here we have now 7 frames per second. You see 5 frames per second was end of story with autofocus on the SL3 and the SL2-S. And I can now here still have autofocus at 7 frames per second. Let's listen to the sound. Wow. Can you hear that? That is snappy. And by the way, the shutter sound in general, when I was shooting in Switzerland, this camera sounds very nice. It's very snappy, very aggressive. Listen to that. And by the way, it counts here down in terms of buffer, how many shots remain before the camera starts to slow down. Have a look here. You see the counter here, counting downwards. That's nice. So let's go into drive mode again and let's see what we can do. We have here the next one is 15 frames per second. My personal guess is you will no longer hear the mechanical shutter. Have a look. It's counting down here, but it's silent because the camera automatically switched to electronic shutter. That was my guess, and that means you rely then on the speed of the electronic shutter, but it's pretty speedy. Look how it counts down here. Of course, if you have fast moving subjects in the scene and you are no longer on mechanical shutter but on electronic shutter, you need to pay attention to rolling shutter effects. That is something I have not tried out yet on that camera, how that impacts my ability to shoot at higher burst rates. I'm going to do that, of course, as soon as I have my own unit of this new camera. Let's go further here into drive mode. Let's see. So here we have 15 frames per second. We just tried this, no sound any longer. And then it goes up to 30 frames per second, 12 bits still, and full autofocus. Have a look how it counts down here. You see, very, very fast. Wow, this is going fast. So I think for action and sports, I have to try it out more, of course, test it more. But this is very promising, looks very promising. Let's go into here what comes next. Then we have interval shooting in the usual way, we have exposure bracketing, and then the multi-shot mode I already showed. So that's at least something I wanted to quickly show. Now I want to go into sample images and show you from my shooting in the city of Lucerne how these images come across. and what I like, and in particular how I like the colors, you know, the way the camera is capturing the scene. I was using, as I said, my 21mm wide angle lens. It's, in my opinion, one of the best lenses ever made by any manufacturer. And I use this lens very often for cities, reportage, landscape, what have you. Looking into the images I took in the city of Lucerne, I was very happy with the outcome and the results. And we had actually very nice weather. We were there late afternoon, early evening, and the structure of the sky, the light, the way the sun was breaking through from time to time was just absolutely phenomenal. And I liked a lot these images. And in terms of detail and in terms of contrast, sharpness, of course the 21mm super aposummicron lens is a beast of a lens, which I had mounted on the SL3-S. But the outcome of the images, the way the sensor was replicating all of this was very nice. I liked it a lot. Let's stop here and pause for a moment. Let's have a look and crop in by 100%. And if you look at that, this is super, super clear and clean, this image. And in terms how the colors come across, you know, this building is placed in front of the sky here. Very nice. And I think in general, a 24 megapixel sensor is still, in my opinion, plenty of resolution for taking professional images. And here you see some of the Christmas decoration was still on. And if you look into that, this just looks very, very good. I was very happy with the images. I will very likely use a couple of them even for other purposes than just here on YouTube. And I think the way I was able to operate the camera, it was just a home turf for me. I was so familiar with that system because of the Leica SL3 I own, because of the SL2-S I also owned, and it's always like coming home. If you have these type of cameras, even if they are newly developed in your hands, the evolution is so gradually that you actually can operate these cameras immediately. Here a nice picture with that famous bridge and tower in Lucerne, the mountains in the background, the Swiss Alps, very nice. Here a couple of women taking selfies in front of that phenomenal scene. And let's go further, let's go here. This is the image I showed before already in the video. Look at this. And this is really how the sky appeared to me with my naked eyes. And again, if I crop in by 100%, this just looks very, very good. And I think this camera will deliver phenomenal image quality with that newly developed BSI CMOS sensor, 24 megapixel as I said. And you will be able to shoot nice scenes with that camera here. And on the rare occasions where 24 megapixel will not be enough for you in terms of resolution, you can go for the handheld multi-shot mode. And that's what I did here. No tripod with me. I was just having the camera handheld in my hands, trying to keep it calm and steady. And on the left hand side, you see a scene with 24 megapixel. On the right hand side, a slightly different composed scene, but towards the same direction with 96 megapixel. And it's actually in the DNG format, so it's a raw image. You have the full spectrum in terms of possibilities for your post-processing. And if I crop in here by 100%, this is just, of course, now resolution rich. Look at that. You have here plenty of reserves for cropping in, doing image compositions in the frame, what have you. You can play with that and it looks really good. It's sharp, crisp. So you don't have to worry if 24 megapixel is not good enough for you. With the handheld multi-shot mode, you can actually lift yourself up to 96 megapixel and it will look good. It is just the resolution some people demand. And of course, with this, and since you don't need a tripod, your burden in your backpack or your luggage which you take with you will shrink dramatically if you don't have to carry a tripod. And that is a big advantage in the same way as what I mentioned before, that Leica cameras actually process these images inside the camera body in the imaging processor, and you don't have to use separate software to get the final image done. And look at that, it looks just nice. That's the new multi-shot mode, 96 megapixel on the new SL3-S. If you ever make it to Switzerland, don't miss the city of Lucerne. It's such a beautiful city here. If you look at that, churches, bridges, the lake, you know, everything is there. It's just very nice. Here, a restaurant with some open space, but still fully in Christmas decoration. And look at that, how nicely the camera was capturing all of that. It looks really good. It's at an ISO of 8000, so clearly is a high ISO image, but it looks good. The noise is pretty much contained. I don't see a lot of noise here. And then in case, you still have the noise reduction in Lightroom at your disposal. The waterfront again with that bridge and the tower, the city again, people walking and crossing that bridge here, and so on and so on. Lots of images. I liked them all. I think they nicely captured the scene which I saw on this evening with the fading out light towards the evening. And I think the last one I want to show here is probably this one. Let me scroll a little bit. I do this very quickly. Oh, here's, by the way, an exposure bracketing. Look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frames, and then exposure bracketed. We get this one here in a nice HDR fashion, which is of course one of the drive mode features of the Leica SL3-S, as it is for the SL2-S and for the SL3. And here's the last one I wanted to show. So here I intentionally underexposed the image by a few stops, and I wanted to see what I end up with if I then correct this in Lightroom. And here you see on the left hand side the image before post-processing, on the right hand side after post-processing, and it took me 4 full stops to get light into the scene, as you can see in the image on the right hand side. And this actually looks really good. It's an indication of very strong dynamic range, not scientifically proven here of course, but if you can lift the image up by 4 full stops on the exposure value slider in Lightroom, you have quite some reserves for underexposing if you want to do so. And I did underexpose intentionally here because I wanted to shoot at an ISO of 100. And if you look at that, this is really nice. It looks really good. There's hardly any noise from that uplift by 4 full stops. And I think the colors, the lights, the Christmas decoration, the people, the scene is captured very nicely. And I think this is very promising. Of course, I need to do much more testing with that new SL3-S to get affirmation about the dynamic range and what you can really do with the camera, how you can push the envelope and how far you can push it and all of that, but that looks really good. Actually, I forgot to mention one aspect, namely the in-body image stabilization. And here you see a shot which I took in the blue hour, and you see the light trails here of the cars passing by on the crossway, and you see the background is pinpoint sharp. Look at this here. This is a Credit Suisse building. Here are some other buildings. Of course, a little bit of fuzziness from movements on the flag here of the Swiss cross, but it is a sharp image. And you see it also here on the bus, right? VPT, Transvia, and so on. But you capture the light trails of the cars. And the longest exposure time I managed to shoot handhold with in-body image stabilization activated was half a second. And this was shot at an f5.6 and an ISO 100. And it looks really, really good. And I mentioned several times whenever I talk about image stabilization, I basically admit that I have not the most steady and most calm hands in the world, but half a second is actually a good result. And as I mentioned in the specifications, up to 5 stops is what that camera should deliver. Of course, it depends on your condition, how you handheld the camera and so on. But here, half a second, no problem at all, and a very crisp, a very sharp image. This concludes actually my survey on the sample images. Let's conclude now the video. Alright, that's it. That's all I wanted to say and show. And I think everything I saw and experienced with this new Leica SL3-S is super promising, that this might be the one and only Leica camera at this point in time which you can truly call a sports and action camera. You can shoot sport and action with the Leica SL3. You can do it with the SL2 and the SL2-S. You also have fantastic video capabilities in both of these cameras, but this camera here, the SL3-S, takes all of this to a completely new level. And in the next weeks and months, of course, as I said, I will purchase my own unit of this camera. I will do more testing, will come back on my channel, so stay tuned and don't miss that content. And if you liked my video here and my presentation, please don't forget to drop me a thumbs up. Stay tuned on my channel, there's always more to come. Thanks for watching, stay safe and healthy, and of course, peace out.